You have no words, no writing, no signals. A predator is 30 feet away, and the only people who can save you have no idea you're there. What do? How did our ancestors survive for hundreds of thousands of years before a single word existed? We take language completely for granted. Right now, in this moment, you are processing thousands of words per minute, reading, thinking, understanding, without any effort at all. But here's a question almost nobody stops to ask. Before any of that existed, before words, before sentences, before even the simplest grunt meant something specific, how did humans function? Scientists believe modern humans evolved around 300,000 years ago. Structured spoken language? That came far, far later, somewhere between 50,000 and 100,000 years ago. That means for hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors hunted together, raised children together, built shelters together, mourned their dead together, without a single word. And the tools they used to do it, they were more sophisticated, more layered, and more fascinating than most people ever realize. Today, we're going inside the full story of how ancient humans communicated before language existed, from the earliest grunts of our prehistoric ancestors to the moment words finally arrived. Let's start at the absolute beginning. Before words, there were sounds, but not random noise, deliberate noise. Early humans used different sounds and vocalizations to attract attention, signal danger, and coordinate with each other. Think about it. You don't need the word run. A sharp, sudden shriek communicates the same thing in 0 seconds. What made these sounds communication, rather than just noise, was tone and volume. A slow, low rumble near a fire meant calm, safe, stay. A sudden sharp screech meant danger, now, move. A rhythmic series of calls during a hunt could coordinate an entire group of people across a wide area without a single recognizable word. These weren't accidental. These were proto-language, the raw building material that true language would eventually be constructed from. And here's where it gets remarkable. Researchers now believe our human ancestors may have had the physical anatomy to produce complex sounds as far back as 25 million years ago. The voice box, the throat structure, the capacity, all of it was there, waiting. The body was ready, the brain just hadn't caught up yet. But sound was only one layer, not even the most important one. Long before voices carried meaning, the human body was already fluent in a language all its own. Pointing, beckoning, raised hands, a furrowed brow, a bared smile. These gestures predate humans entirely. Our closest primate relatives, chimpanzees and bonobos, use rich, complex gesture systems right now, today, to coordinate movement, build bonds, and even point at specific objects to communicate what they want. Our ancestors did the same, and then they went much further. Researchers call the most sophisticated version of this pantomime, full-body imitation used to convey complex ideas without any words. Want to warn your group that a large animal is approaching from the north? You don't need language. You mime the creature's movement, point the direction, stomp your feet to communicate its size. It was, in essence, the world's first presentation. And facial expressions run even deeper than gesture. Something as instinctive as a smile didn't begin as happiness. Researchers believe it evolved as a way of exposing teeth to show a stranger that your mouth was empty, that you weren't a threat. I am unarmed. I mean no harm. The human face was broadcasting signals for millions of years before the mouth ever formed a word. Here's one most people never expect: physical touch. In early human communities, just as in chimpanzee groups today, grooming was one of the most powerful forms of bonding that existed. Cleaning wounds, picking through hair, sitting close. the deliberate act of physical care. It sounds primitive, but this was communication. It said, without a single sound, "I trust you. You are safe with me. We are connected." But here's the problem that changed everything. As human groups grew, from tight bands of 20 people to communities of 100, then 150, you simply could not physically groom every person whose alliance you needed to maintain. There weren't enough hours in the day. So what replaced it? Vocal grooming. Rhythmic sounds, humming, early music and song, used to bond with multiple people simultaneously, at a distance, without physical contact. Researcher Robin Dunbar spent decades arguing that this vocal bonding system eventually evolved into what we now call gossip, sharing social information about other members of the group. That word gets a bad reputation, but gossip wasn't small talk. It was infrastructure. It kept communities informed about who was trustworthy, who was dangerous, who was sick, and who had earned respect. It was the original social network. And it all began because early humans needed a way to stay connected to more people than their hands could reach. Around 40,000 years ago, something profound shifted. Humans stopped just making sounds and moving bodies. They started doing something no animal had ever done before. They started leaving messages that could outlast them. In caves across France, Spain, Indonesia, and Australia, early humans pressed their hands against stone walls, mixed red ochre and charcoal into paint, and recorded their world. Bison, mammoths, abstract shapes, geometric symbols, and hands. Dozens and dozens of human handprints, each one saying something that needed no translation. I was here. These weren't decoration. Researchers believe these paintings served as hunting records, tracking animal movements, seasonal patterns, migratory routes. They served as ritual communication, connecting the living to the spiritual. They served as group memory, knowledge passed to children who would never meet the person who painted it. The pigments tell their own story. Red ochre discovered in South African caves has been dated to at least 60,000 years ago, pushing back the timeline of symbolic human thinking by decades of scientific assumption. As archaeologist Tammy Hodgkiss described it, ochre doesn't just show us early art, it shows us how human brains were developing, how our ancestors had begun to think beyond the immediate moment, storing information, communicating across time, using their environment as a medium. That is communication, across generations, on a rock wall, in the dark. At the start of this video, I put you in an impossible situation. No words, a predator nearby, the people who could save you, completely unaware. Now you know how your ancestors handled it. Not with language, but with sound and gesture and expression, and everything the human body could produce before the brain found its words. And it worked. For hundreds of thousands of years, it worked well enough to keep our species alive, coordinated, and connected. Here's the uncomfortable, beautiful truth that sits underneath all of this. The most sophisticated communication technology ever developed is not your phone, not the internet, not the written word. It's the system you were born with, the one that was being refined for millions of years before you arrived. If this kind of deep dive is what you come here for, the real history, the questions nobody asks, the answers that change how you see yourself, then subscribe. That's exactly what this channel exists for.